Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Kathy Barnette Show. I just want to, as I always do, I just want to start by saying thank you, each and every one of you. Every single week, I am landing in the top 100 of Apple Podcasts. I know that is as a direct result of you clicking and listening and sharing. Thank you so very much. Make sure you subscribe as well as hit the like button and leave a comment. It really does bless my heart and it's educational. Even if you don't like something, let me know. I want to hear it. But before I begin, you can see I have my guest, Oli London. I'm so excited to get into a conversation with Oli. But before I do, let me just tell you guys about my book once more. Nothing to Lose, Everything to Gain, Being Black and Conservative in America. And I just wanted to read a little excerpt. This is when Frederick Douglass, he was getting onto a train. Everyone knew who Frederick Douglass was at the time, but nonetheless, he's a very self-important individual and an important person in his own right. And yet he gets on the train. He is told he has to get up and move to the back of the train. And he is told by some of the white people who were traveling with him, "I'm so sorry. I hate that this is happening to you. They have just degraded you." To which Frederick Douglass said, "I prefer to be true to myself, even at the hazard of incurring the ridicule of others, rather than be false and incur my own abhorrence." And that is truly like the stake in the ground for me, is regardless of what others may be thinking about me and what others' opinion may be of me, I prefer to be true to myself and allow others to ridicule me than to be false to myself and incur my own abhorrence, my own disgust. And that is, I think, such a wonderful kind of stake in the ground, especially in the culture in which we find ourselves in. And it's kind of the precursor of what Oli and I are going to be talking about, because I have a feeling, Oli, a little bit of everything you do is your attempt to be true to yourself, even at the risk of incurring others' ridicule. Would you say that is somewhat true of you?
Yeah, I mean, for anybody that speaks out on the topic of gender ideology, you're met with backlash from trans activists, from these LGBT organizations that are supposed to be, inclusive. They're supposed to be the most inclusive people, so loving and welcoming, but actually many of these activists are the complete opposite. So, of course, they're met with this barrage of daily abuse, but I feel, at the end of the day, God is guarding the people that speak out, and, God wants us to deliver a message, and, it should be common sense to protect kids and speak up.
Yeah. Well, Oli, let me just start off by saying I appreciate you. I really do. I appreciate the journey as when you popped onto my radar, you were going through your own journey in life and where you find yourself today. I even appreciate the things you are highlighting, not only giving clarity to the gender dysphoria that is trying to become mainstream in our country today, but also your recent voice on Islamic terrorism. I mean, so you are truly a glutton for abuse. If you weren't getting abused enough in talking about and standing up against this mainstreaming of gender dysphoria, now you add on top of that what you've been doing is speaking out and putting information out there, especially on Twitter, now known as X, but just putting a spotlight on it, trying to bring clarity, using your voice to shine a light on it. So I just want to start off by saying I appreciate you. I really do. And I appreciate the stances that you're taking, as well as your journey to get here. And if you don't mind, because I would love to kind of frame our conversation, because you are unique, Oli. There is not another Oli out there. And I am not saying that with anything other than just, again, appreciation for your own journey with no judgment whatsoever, but just truly appreciation, because I believe a lot of who you are today and the stances you are taking on is as a direct result of the journey you've gone through. And so I want to kind of use, that as a framework, if you don't mind, of kind of moving through very quickly your journey of getting to where you are today, and then talking about gender dysphoria in our culture, as well as Islamic terrorism, if you don't mind. Do you mind if we go that route?
Oh, absolutely. It's very important to speak up about it. Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, great. So with that, let's talk about when you first popped onto the scene, on my radar anyway. It was all about race dysphoria. And you had introduced this new term I had never heard of, which was, it wasn't transgender, it was transracial. And you were trying to find your own, I guess you were experiencing discomfort or conflict between your biological ancestry and how you wanted to identify yourself. Could you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I just wanted to change my identity completely. And I basically tried to make myself unrecognizable because I had this kind of deep self-loathing of the way I looked, my identity. And, I just wanted to be happy. And, I had this longing for happiness since I was a teenager. I was very badly bullied. And, I really struggled since I was about 13 with identity, self-image, self-confidence. So at one point in my 20s, I did move to South Korea, and that was the happiest I'd ever been. And, I wanted to start changing myself, and I started to undergo some surgeries just to try and improve myself and build my confidence. And, it became a snowball effect. I would just continue to have more surgery. And then I was like, you know what? I love this culture. I love this country. I actually feel at home here. Why can't I just adopt this new identity and become a completely new person? So I really reinvented myself. And, it was a temporary happiness, Kathy. I was always temporarily happy until I had the next surgery. And then there was another surgery. And it was just a kind of never-ending cycle. And at the time, I didn't think anything of it. I thought, all of these trans people, they're adopting 100 different gender identities and pronouns. I was like,
yeah.
So what's the difference? What's the difference between somebody that's a man saying they're a woman and me saying, oh, I want to have the Korean identity. It's cool. It's making me happy, So I didn't see it at the time. Now, in retrospect, of course, I see it was absolutely crazy. And I was super captured by this woke ideology and gender and identity. And I was a completely different person. I was super liberal back then. I was, the complete opposite of who I am now. And I wasn't awake, and I wasn't, happy from within. So that was really why I decided to change my identity. And after a few years, I wasn't happy. And I thought, why am I not happy still? And I'd always had issues with gender dysphoria. I'd always struggled again since I was around 13. So then I was thinking, okay, maybe it's because everybody's telling me you're meant to be a trans woman. So I kind of got pushed into that and had facial feminization surgeries, and I was temporarily happy. And then, suddenly everyone's being nice to me. Oh, you look amazing. This is who you're meant to be. And then that really kind of reinforces that behavior.
Thank you for your honesty and your brutal honesty. And I know that is that is a level of honesty that doesn't come natural for a lot of us. That I hear a lot of introspection in that, looking at yourself and being honest with yourself. How did you go from being bullied, not being happy with who you are, with paying hundreds of thousands of dollars on surgeries to become Korean, but then saying, no, I think I want to be a woman, so I'm going to do more surgery in that direction, to who you are right now, sitting here talking to us?
Well, it was a very, very long process. And I kind of went through these surgeries and changes over a 10-year period. So it became almost a yearly thing that I would try to change myself. And I'd feel great for a couple of months each time. And then that feeling would kind of disappear and I'd be unhappy again. And then I'd be thinking about the next thing. So I just never felt good enough. So obviously I was living in Korea. I wanted to change my identity. And, I felt at home there. I felt like people, they seemed happy. And I thought, well, maybe I just change my looks. I will be happy too. And it doesn't work like that. You can't just change your appearance and suddenly you wake up happy. Actually, happiness comes from within. So that is something I only discovered around a year and a half ago. Focus on the inner person. It doesn't matter about the outside appearance. Focus on the person inside. So, it was difficult to overcome those struggles, but for me, it was finding a purpose in life. And I became Christian, and that gave me a purpose. It was like, you know what? You need to accept the way you're born and just be happy with who you are, and work on yourself internally, and, focus on self-confidence and building that self-confidence, and just, changing your identity is not going to make you happy.
Yeah, for a lot of people, social media is real to them. And when people like myself say this isn't real, to these people, to some people, it is very real. And yet I recognize that we have a whole generation of people who are looking at these images on Instagram and TikTok, and everyone doing these little dance challenges, and everyone seems so happy and their life seems so great. But it is just a snapshot in time, right? It is just all you're looking at, if it's an image, is just this photo. You don't see what came before that photo. You don't see what came after that photo. You just see 1, 2, 3, smile and click, right? Camera action, here we go. And if there's a little TikTok video, you're just seeing a couple of seconds of a whole life. And yet we have become, and in fact, that's the purpose of these social media algorithms, is to get you to live in this virtual world as though it's real versus spending time in your own life. So I absolutely agree with you when it comes to social media and how to be responsible about it. I love the fact that you talked about giving your life to Jesus and that giving you a purpose. That's the same thing that happened to me at the age of 19, of giving my life to the Lord and finding a new path to walk down that has brought purpose. Life has not been easy every step of the way, but it certainly has. Now, when you talk about doing the work on the inside, I am a layman at this, but I've been studying for some time neuroplasticity and really focused on the mind, the mind and the brain, but primarily the mind, and capturing my thoughts and reconceptualizing those thoughts and dealing with my thoughts, because as you think, so you are. That's where dysphoria is. You're thinking that your thinking is not matching reality. What was that for you when you say, I had to deal with the inside and look at me from the inside versus trying to change on the outside?
Well, I just got to a point where I'd been changing myself for 10 years. I'd gone through, obviously, the identity struggle with the Korean identity, and then obviously being transgender. And, none of it was giving me happiness. And it got to a point where I'd just gone so far with it. And I was like, this is really not going to make me happy. The more I do, the more unhappy I feel internally. So I need to take a step back from this. I need to realize that this isn't ever going to make me happy. And if I don't deal with these issues now, I'm never going to deal with it. So I thought, you know what, I have to just be brave and just face it head on and work on myself step by step each day. And, it's a process. It takes time, obviously, to change your entire way of thinking and change your mindset, but I think the human mind is very powerful, and anything can be changed if you have that determination, motivation, and if you're driven to want to change and want to realize that you can be happy. You just have to, tackle your issues head on. So, I worked on that and tried to have a more positive mindset, and tried to realize it's not important changing the way you look. It's just be a good person. Try to use your experience, however bad or good in life, to try and help other people. So as we know, there are millions of people that struggle, particularly teenagers that struggle with these thoughts of changing their identity, which is very much driven by social media, because, young people are taught that they're never good enough, that they have to look like their favorite celebrity. They have to change their gender if they want to be cool, if they want to have validation. So that is the culture we live in. And I think that's very harmful and very toxic. So I think, we can change the mindsets of young people. We need to encourage them to love themselves. We need to encourage them that they are good enough. They are worthy, the way they're born.
I hear in the midst of this is, moving away from a self-involved, focused, me, myself, and I. It's all about me being happy, to you finding purpose outside of yourself. That is not just about you. And I do see, I think, maybe it's just because I'm Gen X and I think all the young kids are very self-involved, but I know I certainly was as well, but it appears there's an oversaturation of people looking at, my truth, my happiness, me, myself, and I, versus looking outside of themselves. Do you think that has a role to play in it, just how self-absorbed our nation has become?
Yeah, again, that's to blame on social media. While there are, of course, benefits of social media and connecting people, I think with young people, it kind of pushes this kind of narcissistic society where, you've got to post the latest selfie, you've got to look better than everyone else, you've got to be showing off. And what many people present on Instagram and TikTok is not their true life. A lot of them, if they're struggling with their identity, they're pretending to be happy that they're on hormones, they've had a surgery, they feel amazing, and they certainly don't feel amazing after those surgeries. They're very, very brutal. The effects these hormones have on their bodies are not pleasant, and they're very, long-term effects. It completely changes their brain, their physical appearance, and everything. So, I think there's a society is young people are driven and rewarded to focus on self, to, like you said, be a me society. And this is why we see so many people adopting unusual identities. Obviously, you have non-binary, there's so many different identities on TikTok. And often the more extreme that identity, the more praise or validation or views or engagement that person gets. And I think many people base engagement in terms of number of likes or positive comments as a goal, an aspiration that shows them how valid they are. And they shouldn't be measuring their self-worth based on social media algorithms and how many people like their posts.
And yet you see it all the time, of people getting that chemical hormonal hit and dopamine, like, boom, I got a like, or somebody retweeted me, or, how many followers I have, and that being associated to my worth and my value and my voice, versus, back in the day, your value was based on what you could create, what you could innovate, the family you built, right? The home you built, what you contributed to your country. Ask not what your country can do to you, for you, me, but ask what you can do for your country. Remember that being a slogan? So it was always, what can I build? What can I contribute? What can I give? And today the shift is, away. We put less value on those things because, according to some in our culture, capitalism sucks. And instead we've raised the bar on our emotions and how I feel, and what is, and always having some kind of emotional trauma, being identified by our emotions versus being identified by what I've created, or what I've produced, or what I've invented, or what I've sacrificed. I'm now being identified, and there seems to be a shift in how we value these things, right? We value less on the person who can create jobs and create a family and, have a beautiful home. We've lowered the value on that, and we've increased how we esteem, what is your emotional baggage? What is your emotional damage? We kind of shifted how we place value on different things in our culture.
Yeah, again, that links a lot back to social media, because you get rewarded and you get more engagement if you are focused on self. So maybe showing off your new car, showing off a designer outfit, showing off your new identity, or if you transition, showing off the new look. That is more rewarded than somebody that does good for their community. Like you said, job creation, a business person, entrepreneur. Sure, we do have some very great entrepreneurs that do have a good following, but it's more easy to get followers and engagement if you're someone like Dylan Mulvaney, who puts on a dress, parades like a bimbo on camera, and tries to make people laugh while mocking women. So that is incentivized, because if we see people like that, they get so many brand deals. They're on all the red carpets. They're at the award shows. For a young person, that is very aspirational. They don't aspire to be somebody that, may open a business. They aspire to be an influencer. And I think that is a very harmful shift in people's mindsets. Is it's no longer about helping the wider community or helping build something, focusing on a career that will build something that will leave a legacy on the world. It's more about focus on the self. And it seems much more aspirational for a young person. I think about 1 in 4 young people want to be an influencer, and that is more of their goal than becoming a doctor or a physician, somebody that can actually make an impact.
Yeah, I certainly believe that social media, there's good aspects of social media. Look, I met you on social media, right? And we DM'd each other and now we're here. This is how Vivek and I actually met. Vivek Ramaswamy, we met in DM. He saw me. I was running for U.S. Senate. I was on the debate stage. He saw me on the debate stage. He liked it so much. He liked my Twitter page. And then I got his book, Woke Inc., that I proudly display right here on right here on the table. And I liked it so much that I went to like him, saw he liked me, and I DM'd him. And the rest is history, right? So social media certainly has its benefits. It certainly is benefits with what Elon Musk has done with X of allowing for the most part, people to express their opinions, their thought. Freedom of speech is being exercised on that platform. And we see what that has done in galvanizing people and organizing people for the good in many cases. But I don't believe, but on the other end of the good, you have the bad, right? And we're talking about that right now. And I certainly believe that social media has been used to reinforce this me, myself, and I kind of narcissistic society in which we live in. But I don't believe it's the origin. I don't believe it is the genesis of how we've gotten here. I do believe that where we find ourselves, let's just take, you speaking out against what Hamas did on October 7th, the Islamic terrorism that's taking place in Africa, especially against Christians. What we see, the Islamic terrorism that's going on in the western part of the world. You can go to Oli's Twitter page and you're categorizing, you're chronicling with videos and images and stories of the Islamic terrorism that is taking place. But if you say Islamic terrorism, now you stand to be labeled Islamophobic. And then let's jump over to gender dysphoria. If you don't believe a grown man dressed in prostitute attire should go in front of a group of 5-year-olds and read sexually suggestive books, and if you dare to say that out loud, now you are in danger of being labeled homophobic. And language, right? Because I don't know if it was Joseph Stalin or Saul Alinsky or George Orwell who said, "He who controls the language controls the masses."
And because if Lenin, Vladimir Lenin,
okay.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
So many people have taken credit for that saying. It's so many, but the thought is real. I believe that whoever came up with it, whoever said it is true. If I can control what you are allowed to say, and if I can limit what you can say, I can now control what you think. I will control your thoughts. You will only think what I am allowing you to think. And I'm going to narrow that so that you can only think certain things. And this is how you begin to change social order, how you can change laws and rules. Look at Canada, look at certain parts of Europe. Now look here in America where we have people who want to put forth bills that will criminalize you saying misgendering people, or criminalize you stopping a grown man from walking into a little girl's restroom because you don't think that's right and because you know that it's wrong. So I think there's something a little bit more insidious and evil that is underlying what we are experiencing in our culture. And I believe, again, that social media is reinforcing these bad behaviors. But I don't believe social media is the root. I believe there's something more insidious that is happening.
Yeah, social media is not the root. It's just a platform where ideas are spread. And there are some great benefits, like obviously X, formerly Twitter, has become really the people's town hall. It's been, a bastion of free speech that Elon has been really fighting to uphold. And now you have, the EU, European Union, is trying to pass hate speech laws. You have Ireland is trying to pass a hate speech law. And the issue with that is this is, how do you define hate speech? These bills that are being pushed, how do you define hate speech? They can just say, oh, we think misgendering someone is hate speech. They can say, using the wrong pronouns is hate speech. So that is a real danger that we're seeing right now. And there is something more insidious behind it. The transitioning children, the educational system pushing kids to transition from 4 and 5 in kindergarten. That is insidious. And I think there's a lot of money being made behind this. There's also a lot of powerful people. We have obviously the World Economic Forum have just met, trying to silence what they consider disinformation and misinformation. But again, how do you define disinformation? Because a lot of these leaders like Justin Trudeau use disinformation laws and policies to try and silence people being critical of their own policies.
Yes. Now, what part of Europe are you in?
The United Kingdom.
Okay. Yeah. So in America, we have red shirts and blue shirts. We have Democrats and Republicans. And most people believe that that is who we're fighting. That as a Republican, I'm fighting the blue shirt. I don't buy into that any longer. I believe that we do have communists in our country. Sometimes we call them progressives on the left. I believe we do have some people who behave kind of like a cult on the right. You have to be mindful of them as well. And then I believe that there is an elite group, a bipartisan group of elites. And then you have the rest of us, right? I believe the rest of us, that category is larger than the other three combined. But the other three, at least two of the other three, the bipartisan group of elites and those who are behaving very much like communists in America, they have their hands on a lot of reins of power. And they are directing conversation and everything. When I look at Klaus Schwab, for example, he has made it perfectly clear that his purpose is to is for us to own nothing and to be happy about it. Now, it doesn't mean he won't own anything. And it doesn't mean that the elites who go to Davos won't own anything. It's just that we won't own anything and we will love it and say thank you very much. And in fact, I believe that that is the natural order of things is, this idea of this American experiment. It was very new in practice. It wasn't new in thought. There were those, Locke and others from, Europe, who had the thought, but it was America who put the thought into action with declaring our independence and saying, by hell or high water, however this turns out, it's going to be we the people. But when you look around the world, what we have in America is not what history has always defaulted to. It has always defaulted to this world that Klaus Schwab is talking about, that you have a bunch of elites and nobles, the king and his nobles, who own everything. And then the rest of us who don't own anything and we love it, right? That is the natural default. And I believe whether we're talking, and I believe all of these things are interconnected, whether I'm talking about if I say what Hamas did on October 7th was barbaric and is brutal. And by the way, they're all Muslims. Now, all of a sudden, I'm in danger of being labeled something horrible. Or if I say a man should not compete in women's sports, now I'm being labeled homophobic. With them trying to control language, because if I control language, I can control thought. And if I can control what you think, I can control you. The reason why I try to elaborate on topics that matter is because we live in a culture where everything is fitted into 250 characters or less. Even on the debate stage when I was running for U.S. Senate, and then when I was coming alongside Vivek in his presidential bid, everything was say it as quickly, as fast, as succinct in 2 minutes or less. And there's very little room under that model to give context, to give history, to help people kind of come alongside what it is you're doing. But again, this is the conditioning of our culture to get us from thinking deeply, pausing, not being so reactionary, but being deliberate. So I'm glad you recognize that I do I want to explain and make sure that we're all on the same page.
Yeah, I mean, going back to your point earlier about the elites is, a lot of people just go along with what they say. So if Bill Gates says something, oh, it must be true. Bill Gates is not a doctor. He has no qualification in medicine. So why on earth should somebody be listening to him for helpful advice? And again, these people preach, about climate change. You have John Kerry, the special presidential envoy for climate, always on a private jet. I believe he's taken in the first year or two of the Biden administration, I think he took about 70 private jets. So, these people, same with Klaus Schwab, he wants us to eat bugs. Bug burgers is better than meat. It's going to save the climate. But do you really think Klaus Schwab and all of his cronies will be sitting around the table at Davos eating these burgers? No. But sadly, a lot of people believe what these so-called leaders say because the mainstream media tells them that these are the experts. We need to listen to them. But that's why I think it's very important to have individual thinking. It's very important for people to do research. So, for instance, with the Israel-Palestine conflict, it's, of course, very important to see what's going on both sides to try and get a better understanding. It's also very important to learn the history. So I think that's a very important thing. And not enough people do that because they are conditioned since childhood because of the mainstream media to believe what they're told and to go along with the official narrative. So, free thinking is an important thing. And again, X is a great platform for that because it's really opened up so many people's minds. And that's why the elites hate X. They're trying to crack down on the speech there. So, I think, we need to be having these conversations. And I think it's also important for people to have debates, to have discussions, because what happened to people disagreeing on something but still being friends, right? Because, now if somebody is, more pro-Israel or pro-Palestine, they can't seem to be friends. So many people lose friendships over this. And it shouldn't be like that. We should be allowed to have different opinions. We shouldn't be just having one opinion that the elites have told us to believe, regarding climate change, regarding gender. We should be allowed to have these discussions. And I think that is one of the dangers of things like the World Economic Forum. They don't want you to think for yourself. They want you to believe the official narrative that they tell you that you must cut down on your carbon emissions. You must have an electric car. You must have solar panels. You must eat these bug burgers. Well, they are living lavish lifestyles on private jets.
Yes. I love what you just said, that we should be able to have debates and still be friends. Now, it takes a lot of effort. As you can see, I am Black. And to a lot of people, that means I should be a Democrat. And I was, because in the Black community, especially where I grew up, I was born into the Democrat Party, just like I was born into brown skin. There was no conversation about it. You're just going to vote Democrat. And I remember actually studying, researching the people who were I was going to be voting for when I turned 18. And I remember just doing so much research on it. I had my stacks of paper, and I still went into that box and I pulled the lever all the way down Democrat, right? It was just like, you're just conditioned to do that. But I love what the Bible says, that when I was a child, I thought like a child, but when I grew up, I put childish things away. And so by the time I got into my junior year of college, studying finance and other topics, that I began to pay attention to the flow of money and how policies were actually showing up in predominantly Black communities where I lived. And I saw the disconnect from people's verbiage, what they were saying to me, and how it actually showed up in these communities. And so I began to walk off what I call the Democrat plantation, and I will never go back to that, right? However, I have a lot of family members, all of my family, except for my husband, who I would have never married had he been a Democrat. But all of my family are Democrats, and they're wonderful people. They're the best. They're the salt of the earth kind of people. And yet, I would go home once a year for family reunion. And I walked in talking about my policies and ideas. And I learned the art very quickly of how to have a vigorous debate and then be like, okay, let's go eat. Okay, well, what are we eating? Now, it takes a lot of practice, takes a lot of discipline. I find more on my side than theirs. But I too believe we have to risk relationships. We have to risk being labeled something or people not liking us to get an idea out on the table that we believe is important. And I certainly believe talking about the aggression of Hamas, Iran, and many others against Israel, but also against Christians, I think that is a valid conversation to have at the risk of being labeled Islamophobic, or the conversation of gender dysphoria being imposed upon our children at younger and younger ages, and having these little girls mutilate their bodies, thinking they can be something other than their DNA, or little boys being chemically castrated, thinking they can be something other than their DNA, and their children who are not adults, who can't think clearly all by themselves. And now you're imposing this upon them. I think, as you said, the art of having a debate, because it is an art. You can't just walk into a room and just start debating. It's an art of having a debate and still being friends. I think it's very difficult. It's very challenging, but I believe it's worth the risk. What do you say?
I believe it's worth the risk too. And I think, you can't really get things done unless you can somehow meet in the middle. So what happens in these days, 2024, people are put into categories. You're either Republican, you're either Democrat, you're either pro-Israel, pro-Hamas, pro-trans in kids, anti-trans in kids, and you're put into categories. But you can't really accomplish policy. You can't really accomplish many changes without convincing people on one side to move into the middle, or convincing people on the other side to kind of move into the middle as well. So I think it's very important to have debates, and we should be able to get along. We should be able to get along with neighbors that might be Democrat, that might be Republican, because at the end of the day, you're all Americans, you're all one people, and you should be able to have that conversation, and that should be encouraged as much as possible. Is that you're never going to agree with everything with somebody. Same with a politician. You might not agree with all their policies, but you can somehow meet in the middle. And that is super important. But sadly, again, going back to the mainstream media, the elites, they want division. Look what happened with, obviously, the Black Lives Matter protests. Look what happened, obviously, with the pandemic. So much division. You're pro-mask, you're anti-mask, anti-vax. There was so much division, and it seems to be becoming more and more extreme. And we've seen since October these obviously pro-Palestine protests, and then you have the Israeli rallies. It's very, very extreme, and it seems to be becoming a lot more divided, and it shouldn't be about that, because at the end of the day, there are many problems in the world right now, economic problems, wars going on in Ukraine, in the Middle East, and people need unity. People need to come together. And obviously now you have a lot of Americans showing unity with Texas, because the governor of Texas obviously is holding the line with the border, and now 25 states have backed him, which I think is a fantastic thing. And, more people.
We have to.
You have to. You don't have a choice. You do not have a choice.
Because I like the idea of finding middle ground, coming in the middle, negotiating, right? I think the best negotiation is when you're not completely happy and I'm not completely happy. But we're moving forward, right? So we've given up some things so that we can move forward. However, I do believe, because of this polarization that I believe is very intentional, by the media, by social media algorithms, by the Klaus Schwabs of the world, by this bipartisan group of elites in our country, definitely by communists. But it's very intentional, this polarization. But because of the polarization, what I'm noticing is this ramping up in the viciousness and in the high table stakes of the things we're talking about. Yes, mask versus no mask. I was not about the mask. I wasn't going to wear the mask. I was over the mask. It didn't take long for me to get over it. But, I'm not going to die if I wore a mask. But today, open borders, you have it's so polarized. Like, where are the people who, there's no middle ground on some issues is what I'm getting to. There are some cases where I can find middle ground, but an open border that is left completely open, it looks very intentional. People are just flooding into our country. We don't know who they are, where they're going, why they're here. Do they even like me as an American or not? People are being trafficked. It is crazy. Drugs are just flowing in and ravishing our community, small to large. There's no middle ground on there, right? What Hamas did, I believe, if there was ever an opportunity for us to define what evil is, I believe that was the perfect moment for us to be able to unequivocally say what Hamas did on October 7th is barbaric. It is evil. There is no room in civilized society for people like that. People within Hamas who did that. There's no room for people like that in a civilized world. Hello, everyone. Mike Lindell and My Pillow employees want to thank my listeners for all of your continued support. And to thank you, they're having an overstock clearance and new product sale right now for the best prices ever when you use promo code Kathy. That's Kathy with a K. And you get free shipping on your entire order. Get 50% off the My Pillow 2.0. Also, you get 50% off the brand new flannel sheets that just arrived. Y'all know it's cold out there, so you will need it, and you know they won't last long. 6-pack towel sets are only $29.98, and take advantage of the free shipping on larger items such as mattresses and mattress toppers. 100% made in the USA for sale as low as $99.99. Everything is on sale, from their brand new kitchen towels that have the same technology as the bath towels that actually absorb, the dog bed. And let me tell you, the dog bed is amazing. Harriet, our chocolate lab, she sleeps on it every night. It is, not only is it beautiful, it's comfortable. I found my dog and my daughter laying on the bed all together, but you can get blankets, couch pillows, and so much more. To get it and to get the best specials ever, go to mypillow.com or call 800-988-3934 and use promo code Kathy, and you get free shipping on your entire order. So call 800-988-3934 or go to mypillow.com. Use promo code Kathy with the K. Thank you so much for listening, and blessings. So there are some issues where there's no middle ground. I think we need to be very clear about that. There's no middle ground for me with children being allowed to mutilate their bodies in hopes of, now, if you're an adult and my tax dollars aren't paying for it, I would advise against it. But at the end of the day, okay, right? There, like you said, there are other things I have to fight for and against. But little children are not adults. And we recognize their brains aren't fully developed. And so there are some hard red lines that I believe we're going to have to draw in this culture and in the years to come that are going to be uncomfortable. They're going to come with consequences, and the consequences are going to be harsher now because we've played footsie with these people for way too long, that now it's going to cost us something to stand up and say, I refuse to say there's anything other than two genders. And I refuse to teach it to my children. It's going to cost us something to do that. What do you think is our way forward on those immutable issues where there is no middle line?
Yeah, of course. Obviously, with the border and condemning Hamas, there is absolutely no middle ground. And 20 years ago, the vast majority of people would have condemned what happened on October 7th. The vast majority of people would want their country to be safe. They wouldn't want over 100,000 Americans dying from fentanyl every year. They wouldn't want veterans living on the streets while illegals are put in five-star hotels in New York and Chicago. There wouldn't be a middle ground back then. Unfortunately, because of the Klaus Schwabs of the world, they have created such a crazy world where even the most barbaric acts of evil are now controversial. I'm apparently controversial for going to Israel, reporting on this, and speaking with family members. There was a mother of a teenage hostage. She went to a fundraiser in New York about a month ago that was hosted by Donna Karan, the fashion designer. She had pro-Palestinian activists screaming abuse at her. Her child is in a tunnel in Gaza, most likely being very brutalized every single day. And that is the world we're living in now, when some people are so indoctrinated and brainwashed that they think they are in the right. And it's communism, as you spoke about earlier. It's these elites, they want to usher in a new era of communism and Marxism where no, but you own nothing, you'll be happy. That's a quote from Klaus Schwab, I'm sure you know. And that's what they want. They want to take away people's rights. And the border crisis is insanity. I was at Phoenix Sky Harbor Airport in December, and as I was in the queue for TSA, as you know, you take off your backpack, you take off your jacket. The TSA agent, removed the barrier, brought some kids, Latino kids, very young, 5 to 10 years old, and an African migrant, a man. I didn't see their parents at all. Fast track through security, no security checks, just walking straight through. They don't have passports. And I saw on Twitter the other day, there was a famous conservative influencer. They posted a sign at one of the airports, a TSA sign that said, if you're an undocumented migrant, taking your photo at security is optional. So they're even, putting the rights of migrants above Americans. If you go to New York, there's over 67,000 migrants living in hotels. There are many homeless people in New York, again, veterans as well. That should be the first priority. Stop the fentanyl pouring in and stuff. But again, with certain people, you can't have this middle ground because they truly believe that, oh, it's fine, it's human rights, let's let all these migrants in. And it's a matter of time before something very bad happens, because you have, terrorists coming from the Middle East, and it's very, very dangerous when you don't know who these people are. They're in your country. And in some states, in California, the state medical insurer, Medi-Cal, is now funding transgender surgeries for undocumented illegal aliens. I mean, that is the craziness at where we're at right now.
That is where we find ourselves. We have inflation. We have very real issues, high gas prices. I mean, it is just, none of this is making sense. And we try to sit back and say, make this make sense. I don't understand. Why would our leaders intentionally do this? And I think that that's where many of us start of being confused. The reason why we're so confused is because, we're like, okay, well, if you're doing this, then maybe there's a greater good that I don't see. Maybe there's something wrong with me and how I'm thinking. And so, because surely you wouldn't be trying to destroy your own your own country, your own family, where your family has to live, surely, right? And I think this is a very hard, I don't know if I'm fully there, but I'm recognizing more and more that what the issues we're finding ourselves living in, all of the things that you have delineated, the things that I've notated, that these things are real. We are experiencing them. We are not crazy. We are seeing millions of undocumented people just flood through across our borders and into our country, not just here in America, but there in Europe where you are as well. We see that our country is taking our tax dollars and paying for the proclivities of so many different interests that we don't agree with and that on face value would harm us. We're not crazy. We're watching it. And yet it's very uncomfortable to go to the next step and say, they are intentionally destroying our country for perhaps this new world that people like Klaus Schwab talks about quite often.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very difficult question for Americans because you don't want to think that your own leaders could betray you. But no, it's not some coincidence that suddenly California has been destroyed. California was the richest state by far in terms of, the economy was so strong, and go to Beverly Hills, it's one of the richest neighborhoods. And California, how did this happen? How is San Francisco, such a beautiful city, destroyed? How is Portland destroyed? How is Chicago, New York destroyed? All at the same time, Kathy. So we can't put it down to a coincidence that, it's just, it's a bad economy, it's a difficult time right now. How is it happening that you go to the border and they are, the Supreme Court ruled that Texas cannot install the razor wire at Eagle Pass? I mean, that is not incompetence. That is done on purpose. That is intentful. They are flooding America with illegal aliens that, who knows, are they going to be voting at the next election? Who knows, mail-in ballots. What happens? It's, these are questions that I think are difficult questions, but people need to think about is, who are these people that are suddenly coming across the border? There's no way they are that incompetent, because if you can send $200 billion in taxpayer money to Ukraine, yet you can't spend $4 billion to secure the border, that tells you it's completely intentional.
Wow. Oli, thank you so much for your perspective. Talk to us about your book.
Thank you, Kathy. So my book, Gender Madness, is really discussing these important but difficult issues about the gender transition industry. It's really discussing where has this come from, because, Kathy, we didn't have this 15 years ago. We didn't have kids changing their pronouns. We didn't have kids at 11 years old on puberty blockers. And we also didn't have a society back then where we encouraged this, where we thought it was bad. You were a bad person if you object to this. You're a terrible person if you say that a man should not be in a changing room with a little girl. That's the society we're in. I am the bigot. I am transphobic. I'm homophobic because I object to that. Women are called transphobic or hateful for saying that they do not feel comfortable undressing with a man in their locker room, and should be common sense. And so the book is discussing this. The second half of the book really discusses different state legislation. There's been great progress within the last year. Over 20 states have banned gender transition surgeries. Utah has just passed a bill to ban biological males in girls' spaces in schools. So there's a lot of progress that's being made, but we need to understand, where is this coming from? Algorithms on TikTok and Instagram reward and incentivize people that change their identities. They get a lot of views, they get a lot of engagement, and that is the serotonin hit that these kids desperately crave. I also talk about the link between autism. There's a huge link between autistic kids being misdiagnosed, being told that they have gender dysphoria, when actually they're just struggling to understand their autism, and they need help with that. They shouldn't be put on hormones, which is going to make their feelings far worse. They should be helped for whatever condition they are struggling with. So talk a lot about that, talk a lot about my own personal journey. And also, I have a positive message in the book about anyone, no matter what you're going through in life, however dark times might feel, you can overcome these struggles. And I think we can all find that confidence and happiness from within. We just need to have that self-motivation, and also need to realize there are many people out there that can help. So this is a book that's very helpful to people that may know somebody that's struggling with their identity, and also It has all the facts about the research that counters the narrative that puberty blocks and hormones are perfectly healthy when the long-term studies I quote in my book show otherwise.
Where can people get your books? I'm assuming everywhere books are sold?
Yes, well, actually not in the bookstores themselves, because apparently it's too controversial to say that kids shouldn't transition. But yeah, so I've been into Barnes & Noble's, the flagship store in New York. They wouldn't stock it in store, but you could order it online, collect it in store. They just won't put it on the bookshelves. But it is available on all of the book retailers' websites, Amazon, Books A Million, BarnesandNobles.com, and Simon & Schuster, and all the other book retailers online, but they just won't put it in a store because it's a controversial opinion, apparently.
Right. Now, I thought it was, I never heard before that the algorithms on the social media platforms reward you if you change your pronouns.
Mm.
Is that true? Like,
yeah,
did I hear that correctly?
Yeah, look at Dylan Mulvaney, for instance. So, it was getting decent amount of views before, but suddenly he started his Days of Girlhood series, and suddenly the views shot up, the engagement shot up, and so Dylan Mulvaney is seen as a role model for young people that have these identity issues, because they see that, if I just transition, if I proclaim myself to be trans, people are going to like me. And we see huge engagement, algorithms pushing and promoting videos of people like Jeffrey Marsh, who very harmful to young people. So there is a reward and incentive for kids transitioning. And many of these kids are just lonely. Some of them get bullied at school. They don't get that attention in their real life. So they take to TikTok and Instagram to get that attention. And the algorithm promotes those videos, and it just reinforces their behaviors.
And that's what Chloe Cole said. I'm sure you're familiar with her, a young detransitioner. She has actually been diagnosed with autism, as you stated, and she too makes that connection between her being undiagnosed with or misdiagnosed, them not recognizing her autism, and and this identity crisis she felt. It's just very, very interesting. Now, let me ask you, why do you think the public did not embrace your dysphoria? Because we seem to live in a culture that, I call it oppression Olympics. The more oppressed you are, the more amazing you are, right? And so why is it that they did not embrace your transracial dysphoria?
Well, yeah, that's an interesting point, because the more shocking your identity is, you seem to get more praise and love and validation and rewards, incentives. But, you can identify as an animal. You can identify as a furry, somebody that dresses up as an animal. You can identify as whatever you want. But apparently, when I said that, why not? I want to have the Korean look. Why not? I live in this country. I love this culture. Why not? And, the crazy backlash was insane. Like, I've never seen anything like it. And it's like, now of course I realize it was crazy and you can't do that and stuff. But at the time I was just like, well, everyone else is non-binary. They're they, them. I'm just going to go with how I feel and what makes me happy. And, it just exposes the hypocrisy of the inclusive and loving and, equal rights movement of the trans community, when they're the very opposite of that.
Yes, absolutely. Well, Oli, thank you so much for coming, stopping in, and having a chat with me. I truly appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Kathy. Appreciate it.
Yes. And to everyone else, again, go out, get my book, Nothing to Lose, Everything to Gain, Being Black and Conservative in America. You can go out to Amazon or anywhere else and order it. Also, Oli, your book, Gender Madness, you can go out and pick that up as well. Please like, subscribe, share, rate, leave a comment. Blessings. Thank you all. Bye-bye.